thanks everyone for sticking around. So the panel is called User Acquisition, Can Robots Do It Better? Why doesn't everybody get up on stage and we can kind of introduce ourselves? There we go. Cool, so why don't we just start with you, Ong?
Okay. Hi, my name is Ang, and I'm a senior UI manager in Wargaming. I'm based in Berlin. I'm sorry, in Helsinki at the moment.
Cheers. Robert Lagus. I'm at Next Games. I'm doing user acquisitions there.
Hey, my name is Mika. I lead the user acquisition team at Musician. Are we missing Camilo?
Yeah.
So we're supposed to start in a few minutes, right?
Well, you know. Well, we could just get started, and if he shows up, we'll make him sit in the front row. Cool. So I think a good question to start with, because it's the only one I remember, and I can't find the questions on my phone right now, is but I think it's also an appropriate question to start with.
Printed list.
Is what do you think is, so we're talking about like user acquisition automation. That kind of means setting up like just for maybe people that don't fully understand what that is or are unfamiliar, kind of setting up user acquisition systems to run by themselves, right? Without human oversight or without humans having to do any sort of like data entry or reporting or targeting even. Ah, here he is. Do you want to grab a chair? And then just stay there. No.
Eric.
Cool. Yeah.
Don't get near the edge. We haven't got the insurance.
Cool. Cool. So we got everybody. You want to introduce yourself?
Oh, hey, I'm Cam at Future Play Games. Apologies for being a bit late. I'm handling all things analytical, including user acquisition and BI and ad ops, etc. at Future Play.
Cool. So yeah. Anyway, so automating the sort of like the end-to-end process of doing user acquisition. So acquiring users, analyzing them, changing bids. What do you think is a good place to start, right? So I mean, if you think about that task, right, of doing all of that, like from zero to getting a completely autonomous user acquisition system, that could be like pretty intimidating for someone that's that's just starting. What do you think a good place to start is? Like, what's a first kind of good initiative just to get just to make some forward progress on automating your UA?
So, like from our perspective at least, I'd almost turn that on its head rather than picking a particular area to do or having a plan for attack for automating systems is just to hire the right person in, maybe, and having someone on the UA team who's technically able to build out these systems. Then, in our case, my day-to-day job, I was doing things, and then I realized, hey, perhaps a machine could do this better or more efficiently or eliminate the need for me to do this task, and so I built it out. So I'd almost argue that rather than picking a particular area to attack, getting someone on the team who can actually automate systems is the right approach.
What would they start with, though?
So, I mean, it really depends on what your needs are. First, we certainly started with automating a lot of the reporting, and then automating, figuring out LTV and ROI per campaign. And then these days, I have a dashboard which I come in the morning, and per site ID or per campaign, it specifies whether we need to move particular site IDs up and down out of them or change bids, and then even automates emailing account managers, for example, to tell them what they should do to change the campaigns, or linking into APIs for networks to change bids, etc.
I think I agree with Cam that you need to build a scalable data system first to automate your workflow, because I think most of the time for the UA manager is doing the planning and optimizing, and also like doing the reporting for the results, and it can take like 60 to 70% of your daily time. So that's something that you need to automate first. So once you have because if the UA guy doesn't know how to code, then you need to have like a BI team who are actually building like a data ops and then like analyzing and model for them to actually work with. So that's something you should start first with the BI team.
Yeah, I don't know what more to add to these knowledgeable people on my right side. It's just get your data straight, and from there you can take the next steps. if you don't have the data. I think we'll come back to this data topic.
I think from a, if we were to consider starting UA from scratch and picking up automation or machine learning, maybe not the best approach from the get-go. Maybe start with just running user acquisition and figuring out what's the grunt work that you're running on a day-to-day basis, and starting to automate this. And also keeping an eye out for tools that could potentially ease the process of optimization on the fly. That's all I got for this. I think everyone else is giving good pointers already.
Yeah.
I think if you're starting as like the first, like from the basis, you can also start with some alerting. If you're spending too much, if you have that capabilities, the technical capabilities of building that out, the alerting when you're spending too much or too little, that could be very useful.
I can add just from personal experience, I think as a starting point, if you can get your cost data into like a Google Doc and have that being done automatically, and then tie that to some kind of an LTV prediction, which is married to the source of like some campaign, you're doing pretty well. Like you're probably ahead of 75% of advertisers, right? So like if you can get those two data sets merged together in like a Google Doc, it doesn't have to be like a really sophisticated proprietary dashboard that you interact with. But even if you can just get those two data sets married together, like connected, like joined in a Google Doc, that's a good starting place. I would aim to get to that, because I mean, once you're there and you've built that foundation, you can make it as sophisticated as you want. But even that would save you a ton of time. Cool. So that's my answer to that question. So I think a kind of a good corollary to that question would be, so like we talked about starting points. Where along the lifetime of the game or the app should a company start doing that stuff, right? So if you think about what you all just said about here's the starting point, here's what you should aspire to do as like a first step, at what point does that occur? I think just to add a little bit of context, would that be like pre-soft launch, during soft launch, global launch, first title, second title, 10-person company, 100-person company? When does this process begin? Do you want to start? No.
Well, I guess the question depends a lot what your needs are for the company and where the games are, if they are doing a lot of user acquisition or not. But I can speak from our example at least, which is like we started doing it from day one. And actually it's a good point, Eric, that sort of first thing to do is maybe get in the costs per campaign and then figure out what your LTV per campaign or per channel is. And that's what we did pretty much on day one in a G sheet, which helped a great deal. So yeah, I'd say like everything you can do right from the start to save yourself time and improve the efficiency of what you're doing is a smart move.
I think like from day one, or is even like if you can wait until the soft launch when you actually have some data, because it's, I mean, for the one who's not running UA, then it's a bit hard to actually building something like a template. So when you have some data, you can actually merge it together. So at first, like for us, it's the most annoying part. It's like merging the cost and the revenue per network, per geo, per pubs, and per site ID. So it's always like, you cannot do it at once and just building like get the revenue and the retention first and build the LTV model even on the spreadsheet, and then after that like merging the spend in there and the ROAS.
Yeah, the earlier you can start, the more you can iterate over your processes, over your G sheets, whatever you have. So the earlier you can start, the better.
I think all of these, or the basis of automating anything is just having access to everything, or having access to the right data and beginning to identify patterns that you can then automate on the fly. So definitely from day one, putting the groundwork in place to then later on being able to build on top of your learnings. When is that then the time that actual machine learning or automation comes into play? Then that's a bit trickier. These obviously depend on the maturity of your product and metrics. If there's need to focus on automating bid adjustments, if you're in soft launch and you're not hitting your targets, then this is probably something you shouldn't be spending an immense amount of time on. But
Yeah, I think there's also like, it'd be problematic to be trying to tune your UA spend in a soft launch, because that's not really the point. The point of soft launch is to validate the game and to validate sort of like product market fit. It's not necessarily to be optimizing campaigns and getting the cheapest possible, or like the sort of like, you know, whatever, the cheapest possible installs at like some LTV target, right? It's to like actually be, you know, I think figuring out what the LTV targets are. So I would think that even if you were somehow able to build some of this infrastructure in a soft launch, you wouldn't necessarily want to use it. Because you might be optimizing to the wrong thing. You might be optimizing to like sort of like a local maximum instead of really understanding if the game works. Yeah, so I think one kind of important consideration here too is, so if in building all this stuff, what is your goal? Is it to actually increase the amount of money you spend, like profitably, so like basically increase your capacity to do UA, to do more UA? Or is it to optimize the current budget? So is it to basically like become so efficient that you actually unlock more budget and are able to acquire you know, more users with more money? Or is it to acquire more users with the same amount of money just by making that process more efficient?
I think it's just to, from my point of view, it's first it needs to be optimize the current money that you spend first, and then after that, when you know that the money that you spend is actually you get the return and you can it's measurable, then after that you start to open more budget for the new campaigns and so on. So.
Like, for us at least, we don't have a concept of budgets really. We try to avoid that as part of a company, and we just spend when it makes sense to spend. So if we are optimizing the campaigns, it means we'll be spending less on the ones we are at the moment, or making more of a profit margin off them. And it means we'll be able to enter new campaigns or expand the reach, because we can do them more efficiently. So for us, it's a case of, yeah, optimizing what we're doing and being able to expand rather than dealing with a specific budget.
Yeah, but you have a budget.
No budget.
So could you spend 10 million tomorrow?
Okay, we got 2 mil in the bank, but if we wanted to spend 10 mil and it made sense to do it and we're 100% sure of it, like I'm sure we could come up with another 8 mil somehow. If anybody knows how, that would be great. But yeah, like in theory...
It sounds like you've got a $2 million budget.
2 million budget to spend on one day, but as long as we're doing it in a smart way, if we spend 2 mil, we should get some of that back and be able to spend it again the next day. But...
Well, no, in 30 some days, right?
Okay, 30 some days, yeah.
Yeah. Sounds like you have a budget.
Well, regarding the question, so is it to improve or increase volumes, or is it to optimize performance? And I see that it's both, definitely. It really depends on your product metrics, what you can do. If your metrics don't allow you to go to broader targeting or higher CPIs or so forth, then you'll be looking to make the most out of the money you have, which then leaves more time to allocate that budget into running new experiments. So.
At Next, we're more along Cam's line, so we do optimize the things that we buy, that we want to make sure that we're buying the right users at the right time for the right price, and that in later stages open up the budget or the volume that we can spend on new users.
Cool. So this next question, I'll kind of split it into two because I think it's more interesting that way. So the first part is, what areas of UA technology do you see being fundamentally innovated on in the next few years? And what areas would you like to see innovated on in the next few years?
So for me, I think the attribution would be one of the areas that could be innovative. So at the moment, it's for the direct UA, direct advertising, attribution is working really well for tracking the direct download. But in the future, we will do more some sort of like online, offline campaigns, YouTube campaigns, or even TV campaigns. So that kind of thing that at the moment we also tackle some of the challenge with the attribution partner to actually measure in the proper way. And also we also have some also in the re-attributions for the user who actually download the app and also uninstall and reinstall the app. draft. That's also another thing that we see that some of the attribution partners will also have some challenge on that. That's something that I would love to see innovative in the future.
Kind of got the same answer to both questions, and maybe it's wishful thinking. There probably is, but both the bit I'd like to see and I hope see will change going forwards is a lot of the top networks at the moment still deal with email and talking, setting up new campaigns or changing bids through an account manager. And yeah, like I say, we've managed to automate a lot of the emails that go to them and sort of try and use them as a part of the machine and treat them like an API in a way. But we could iterate a lot quicker and make it a lot more effective if we could, with the top networks, use an API to set up new campaigns, change bids, change which site IDs we target, etc. So maybe it's wishful thinking, but that's kind of what I'd like to see over the next year.
So just a side point. Whenever an account manager takes you out to dinner or takes you out to drinks, do you ever wonder I wonder how many cents of every install I got yesterday this represents? Because if it's a nice place and you didn't spend that much yesterday, it might be that was 25% of my spend yesterday went to this dinner. Thanks.
It's a good dinner.
Good dinner, thank you.
Actually, regarding this, there's actually recently launched a company called Acquired.io. It's founded by former AppScotch founders that does exactly that. With the goal of automating campaign reporting and optimization on one dashboard. And their focus now initially is in mobile games, so maybe worthwhile checking out. But not to pitch anyone else, back to the question. So definitely working with smaller mobile ad networks is currently very tedious in the sense that critical decisions are sent over email, over spreadsheets or shared spreadsheets, rather than any sort of technical integration. And you essentially don't decide what happens on the end. It's sent through an email thread. And an additional area to this, something that's sort of, I guess sort of everyone's talking about it. I don't know how many are actually proactively working in that space. I know Robert and Next Games are interested in the sphere, but fraud prevention, an area where as these tools become more sophisticated, or that will definitely be a big deal in the near future.
I think what I would wish, and the pain point that I see right now is very much expressed by Cam, because a lot of these optimizations that we do, everything goes over email. And we know, all of us know how we implement a post-install event into our attribution partners, but it's a crazy amount of the networks that we're buying from still can't optimize on these post-install events. And I mean, if I could wish for something from these ad networks, just start optimize on these ones. And we tell you, do this, look at this, but they're still not able to automatically look at these returns or these post-install event metrics. And that's what I would wish.
Cool. I think a good question to follow up on that one with is what do you think automation can't solve? So what pain point do you have that you think just probably will never be able to be automated away, that you're going to always kind of have to deal with as a human being? So I guess another way of rephrasing this is, why are you worth your paycheck, and why can a robot not replace you?
I'll start with this.
Danger.
You're a people person.
I could talk.
Exactly. I mean, it is the personal relationships, because what we've seen as well, we've done UA for quite some time, but actually the personal relationships with the ad networks, the video networks, with the social networks as well, that do pay off. You do get a better relationship. You do get this contact that you couldn't get. You couldn't be on top of their minds without you actually speaking to them. So the fact is that you're a person that you have that social contact, you know their face and they know yours, that's something that you can't replace.
So those drinks actually reduce CPM.
So I was just about to say that you can't automate the dinner. But continuing straight off that, something that well, creative. At least yet, you can have a robot automatically create new concepts for creative to run on these networks. Definitely, as more and more of the optimization work becomes automated, the focus of user acquisition will then be more in building out the infrastructure to support machine learning-based media buy and creative. So that's probably the spaces that can't be automated yet.
I was going to say the same thing, actually, like creative optimization. I've seen one startup, to come back at you on the startup front, who are saying they'll do creative generation. They'll pull off random images from the net and come up with text. And the creatives I've seen them come up with, I don't think would work at all. So I think that is something that's going to be, hard to replace. And the other side of it as well is you can, build a machine, but every company is different. It has different needs. For example, we're more ad-based. We also take into account cross-promotion, network value, bonuses from networks, which we can't pull from an API, etc., into our LTV equation. So you can sort of build a machine to automate things, but you're always going to need someone to understand that machine and tweak it and make sure it's running and sort of oil it, so to speak. So a caretaker, maybe.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. And I think even for the optimization part, because at some point, like people may think that the machine, if you set up the rules, if it hits a certain spend, if it's not hitting this return on ad spend, then you shut down the campaign. But it's an open market out there. So even if you everybody set up the same rules for your campaign, but when we're pitching through the marketplace, everything will be ranked like differently. So even you still need to have somebody who actually understands the number, looking at that and seeing, like making like a constant changes because it's still based on your skill and your expertise instead of just letting the machine, because otherwise everyone would just bidding, if the machine would do, your machine could do to the other company machine, then everyone is just bidding higher. That's what the machine could do.
So I think apropos of news today, which was that Uber is suing their agency Fetch for $40 million, or they're seeking $40 million in damages for fraud. So Fetch is like a mobile ad agency owned by Dentsu. I'll ask, what do you think is the future of mobile ad agencies? Sorry, this one was, sorry, okay, my bad. This wasn't on the approved questions list, so you can, if you want to answer, please feel free. If you don't.
I can answer on this. So I think that for the mobile ad agency, it could be a good addition to the company or the other smaller developer or advertiser who doesn't have the in-house capabilities to actually running and building the UA or the BI system to actually running it. And even for the big companies, it could be something that they can outsourcing a certain projects that they think that is not worth the time for the UA internal team, and then just outsourcing for their agency to do it. But the future is not very bright, in my opinion, because all the big companies are actually the one who spend the most. So they're already building like a sophisticated UA team to actually doing it. So the need for the big clients who actually need an agency would not be that huge.
Might not be the best person to answer this because we've looked into using agencies a few times and never saw much value in it.
You're going to get pitched so hard when you get off stage.
Oh, yeah. But I don't know, like, so from that perspective, a bit of me is like, yeah, like they'll all go away, we'll all get more capable, but at the same time, like, mobile spend on mobile advertising increasing, more and more brands coming into the market, and they're not familiar with the space and need somebody to go in and, talk to these networks and place bids for them. So I see them sticking around for a while, and I'd like to think they'd improve some processes and get more automation, but like I haven't seen much trend in that direction. Now I'm going to get some Uber pitches, but yeah.
Yeah, I think what also P&G CMO revealed at the Mexico here this year was the transparency piece, that if agencies can't deliver this transparency, they will kind of not have any clients anymore. And I think that's something that will need to change.
Also on if we consider the media or advertising industry past what 10, 20 years time, going from a brand advertiser agency relationship where a brand has outsourced essentially the day-to-day operations of running marketing, but with the ability to access data on your marketing performance, which is something that we're all very familiar with. The infrastructure to measuring that performance is built in-house, and the more of that technology, as more of that technology is built in-house, that leaves less and less justification for an agency to spend on a certain media. And what this, so if we, that in mind, if we consider the different types of advertisers currently, and how, or different types of agencies currently, and who are specifically at a competitive advantage, are those that have a technological piece where their offering also solves a problem that a company might not be able to, or might not have the resources to solve in-house. So rather than having an advertiser go to an agency and say, hey, I want to run this campaign, go, it'll be, hey, I need this technology, can you help me implement this in-house? And there will always be advertisers who need more help in setting or building out the infrastructure. So in the sense of an agency, or the future of agencies will definitely change. Not that it's ever been stable, but that it will need to be more focused on technology, and probably also more focused on consulting or helping out building tools for the client.
Cool, so why don't we do, we've got 3.5 minutes left. We could probably take 1 or 2 questions if there are any. Does anybody have any questions? If not, we can do one last question from the panel. There's one in the back.
There you go. This is better be as good as, why do you deserve your paycheck? I think that's my favorite question I've ever heard.
Hello, Timo Pietilä from Rovio. So I have a 3-part question about retargeting. Are you guys doing retargeting? And then are you guys doing retargeting continuously? And then the third part is that do you have any specific things to take into account to automate those operations compared to more regular UA campaigns?
I could say answer all 3 in 1, which is no, we're not doing retargeting. I haven't heard great things, like there are some success stories, but from what I've heard, it's not something that we should invest into at this point.
What was your second question?
Second question, are you doing retargeting campaigns continuously? And if yes, then anything like to take into account when automating that stuff compared to normal campaigns?
I can answer because this was basically 3 yes and no questions. So this was yes, yes, and yes.
Okay. No, the last one was, what are you doing?
No, it was.
What, no, are you doing retargeting? Are you automating retargeting? And then the last one is, what are you doing to...
If you are doing but yes, what we're doing is basically keeping the audiences, the retargeted audiences, up to date. That is a key. If you're not having that up to date, you're basically exhausting that audience over and over again. And if they haven't converted, they won't convert.
So we do run a retargeting for one of our legacy game, and the problem for that game is that even if it has a huge amount of download, it's still very hard to have enough cohorts or the amount of user ID to actually do the proper retargeting. Because if it's too small, then we didn't, and then with the result we see is that it didn't really bring like much of the lift into the actual campaign that we're seeing. That okay, we see some people return, we see some like good return on investment, but the cost for running it is just so much, and then the time for the UI manager who actually investing to running a proper UI to acquiring new user, it's even like less than spending more time on doing the retargeting campaign. So for me, I think it's not very worth it unless you have like a very big user base that you want to really do retargeting properly.
Yeah, I can add something here. So I don't think retargeting is very big in games. I mean, I think Robert, it's pretty clear where there would be a use case at Next because the show is cyclical and it comes on and goes off, and so there'd be, you could perceive a value in retargeting at some point a user who had lapsed because the show went off, and it's probably easier to get them to convert when the show's on. But retargeting actually is pretty prevalent in verticals outside of gaming. So social casino, they do a lot of retargeting. Travel, they do a lot of retargeting. Mobile commerce, they do a lot of retargeting. I would love to walk you through some of the projects I took on in that space with clients, but we only have 3 seconds left. Okay, thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the panel.
Very nicely done.